kind of situation. Morning, everybody. Let me turn live chat on. All right. I'm going to start making tea right off the bat. I'm going to make this purple bud today from Me Leaf. I really like purple bud. I think she is she's up there with one of my favorites. She's just really, really floral and tastes like spring and all that good descriptive stuff that I'm not entirely sure that my brain is up for this morning. It's like the little bud off of the tea. Like they pick the entire bud right away, right? Here, I'll make the package do the work for me. It says this is it's a white tea. Made from lateral buds of ancient purple trees in Yunnan, established at 300 years old. Sun processed for a rich character, peach, sherbet, elderflower, and pine. The pine is definitely there. Like, I wouldn't say it tastes like pine, but it's gonna be similar terpenes, is what it is, right? And so this one wants to be at 195. I'm probably gonna go 190. I'm gonna vary this. I really love this teapot because it lets me set. I say it every time, but it lets me set like this little knob I'm turning right here. Lets me set exactly what water temperature I need, and that has been a game changer because the more I get into teas, the more like precise temperature I need that my other kettle, which had presets, which were fantastic, but they didn't always work as well. So today we're gonna make some tea, and then I'm gonna have everybody help distract me, and what I assume probably in the next 10 to 15 minutes will be my husband who's listening as he drives. Yesterday ended up being kind of a rough day. A few years back now, my husband's mother was diagnosed with like really early stage Alzheimer's, and it went hard and fast. So today he's got to go with his sister to sign hospice paperwork, which is never, an easy step to take. And you know what comes after that, And so it's just been big emotions, right? Big emotions and feelings and, things that don't really matter are, getting under your skin because you have this big emotion under there, of loss. And so today we're going to do a get to know me Q&A because that way I don't talk about it all day long, and as he's driving, he'll come back into reception pretty soon. The only reason you can talk with me now is because we have internet. Other than that, there's no cell phone reception where we're at. But once he gets there, he'll just hear me doing a get to know me Q&A, and that will really, really help distract him, I think, and even if he's not listening, it'll help distract me. So we're going to wait for this tea to get going, and then you guys can just ask me whatever the fuck you want about me. I'm not going to answer any herbal health questions today because that's tomorrow. That's Friday Q&A, although I know I inevitably will drift into it a little bit. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of people, sympathize. They've got a family member going through it, or their mother, or something like that, and it's hard. It's hard, and it was pretty hard on him in general. Maybe a little extra hard. He lives with ASD, so like he's got huge emotions, but letting them out is hard, right? And so it's just hard for him to face it, and she hasn't been there for a long time, if that makes sense, and how it went down, I won't go into it, but it was fucking hard all around, from day one. There was no easing into it. It was just like sudden and like, so we just kind of got a bunch of grief done yesterday. Didn't really do anything otherwise. I didn't get outside. I didn't get any, I did mop the floors. That feels like I did a deep sweep and a mop, and that feels like some sort of victory some days, and that's about it, I kind of feel like on a personal level, I can't speak for everybody in the household, but like I've been like living in like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I've been living in limbo. Like I'm in this weird, I don't know. It's a stuck feeling, but I don't know, more like a hold than a stuck. And I went through this a time back, um, when I was also like shifting like the business and stuff, and I feel like I'm at that same crossroads again, both with myself, with my health, with my business, with my family, and I know that part of it is not fighting it, right? Like it can just um, it can just exist, right? Sometimes the only way to go forward is to sit down for a minute, right? Or to let it just take whatever natural progression it's going to take and just live through it. But um, shit's just hard sometimes. Okay, I'm making tea and start throwing questions at me. If you have a random question you would like to ask me about myself, about the apothecary, about anything besides like super specific health questions, because that's tomorrow, write question real big, and then I'll see it. Um, Hello, April. How does one know if they are still an Irish traveler? I did a 23andMe test. It days I'm English and Northern Irish Welsh. I've always been a forager and well, it's kind of like you grow up in it, right? So it is an ethnic minority. I am in a half of an ethnic minority. You can't really, like, you can find out that like you have like traveler ancestors. You have to start going through your census stuff, see if they were called like carters or pavies or nomadic. It could be like listed as anything on there, and you can start digging. But a big part of it is like growing up in it too, like knowing that you're a traveler. But if you still live over in the EU, you could probably talk to family members. You can look up your last names to see if you have any traveler last names, and pay special attention to maiden names, because sometimes we would hide our last name, like we would take a maiden name or hide a maiden name so people didn't know that we were travelers, because even to this day we're still like excluded from a lot of places, signs up in windows and things like that. More so over in the EU, but in the US they can still print stuff like warning travelers in town. But yeah, you can just kind of roll down that rabbit hole. They just recognized us. I think it was like 2017. They just recognized us as an ethnic minority, and treated us like humans and gave us human rights. Um, so I'm interested to see if that eventually ends up with us having our own DNA category and ancestry stuff. Usually, though, what happens, from what I've seen in my own family, when you take a DNA test, you should have like an in proportionate amount of either Irish or Scottish. Remember, Scottish travelers are a thing too. My family came over. We started as Scottish travelers. That's where the last name Graham comes from. And then we came over to like the Antrim area and just kind of migrated down. But it'll be crazy because like you'll do your DNA test and it'll be like somehow you're like 85% Scottish or Irish, even if you are not from there, or all of your ancestry says Irish or otherwise, or only if one half parent, because the way DNA works is it's not like you necessarily inherit a 50-50 split from your parents, but there are limitations. Like, it's insane, like the level of, and I don't like Ancestry, just to put that out there, because I've watched them over the years change people's DNAs drastically. And I know they're like, oh, our information is always updating. I'm like, that's funny, because y'all are updating a lot of like stuff off of there that you find inconvenient, or that you don't think should fit with this, or you don't think would fit with that. And there's a bunch of Reddit threads about it, and stuff like that. But they changed my DNA on there from like seriously 85% Irish to like 85% Scottish, and I'm like, all right. And it's okay, because a lot of my family, we were Scottish travelers before we came over to Ireland, so it's probably there. But we have a lot of continuity, meaning like the traveler community stays pretty close knit, and so you should have a shit fuck ton of one of that DNA. Um, what is my favorite song of all time and why? I don't know. I always do these personal Q&As even though I've had like a lifetime of gaslighting, so it's hard to answer things about myself like that, and I'm like, fuck it, let's try. Um Gosh, it's really really hard to say. I will say, God, I don't even know the fucking names of songs. I like know like lyrics. I never like look at the list. But you know that one song, Where Is My Mind? Trampled by Turtles covered it, but they aren't who did it. I don't remember the name now. It's from the 90s. I don't know if it's my favorite song, but it makes me fucking cry every time I hear it, which is weird because it's such an obscure song. But it makes me cry, so there's that. um, but yeah, let's see. It says, I don't trust that these companies might do with the information they get from our DNA. Yeah, very accurate. They've been breached a lot, but I did mine like in 2000 and like, I don't know, 9 or something like that when they first came out. Forever, forever, forever ago. I remember it took like 4 months for it to be done. And it cost way more money than it does now. So it's already there. Yeah, you can call me the Pikeys if you want to be a racist, Oh, pixies! I thought somebody called me a pikey. Which, by the way, is like our N word. I was like, fuck, throwing down in the comment section. The pixies. Yes, Where Is My Mind by the Pixies. There it is. That was funny as shit. Um, did you choose to be homeless? If so, why? Hard hitting questions this morning. Um, yeah, no. No, and yeah. Right. I didn't really have a choice, but I did have a choice. Right. Does that make sense? Like, I love my parents very much, and my luck, they're watching this right now. But my mom, mental health issues, and my dad was always gone, and lots of self raising, and not them not knowing about my neurodiversity, and just nobody was there, and there wasn't very much, and so I just had to go. But also, it was really weird because like growing up in like a nomadic culture, like travelers in the U.S., especially back then, really hid who they were. And then that actually got to the point where like you would hide it from your kids while also like living that life. And then like I didn't really know in the beginning why I had this urge to like constantly move. I felt like if I didn't move, I would die, and there was lots and lots and lots of trauma when I was a kid. So I don't want to discount that as well, right? But like running felt safe. I had to move, but I would like to also put this out there that I wasn't like the weekend warrior that had like the parents' credit card. Because I see some people come at me about that. They're like, "Well, were you like homeless by choice?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But don't mix that up with the people who are out having an experience before they go to college. Right, like I might have been homeless by choice, but I was 13 years old and I was eating out of dumpsters and flying signs, and I was filthy and accumulating massive amounts of trauma, and like it wasn't like going home was safer really or any different, I yeah, so I've been on my own since I was 13, but I've probably been on my own since I was about 8 or 9, kind of deal. And things have come a long way. I've repaired a lot of my relationship with my parents, and um, it's hard. I came back when I got pregnant with my son, and that didn't go easier. you know, uh, it was just it was very hard, long stretch of my life, and I don't know. I just went from like fucking homeless desperation to like pregnant desperation to like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna sell drugs because I have to pay for diapers and shit. I didn't know any different, and I couldn't really ever keep a job. I've only ever had like 2 or 3 jobs in my jobs in my whole life, and I only kept those for a couple weeks because it was fucking crazy. I'm like, I just couldn't fathom, and I just couldn't adapt and live in that reality. So I've always been self-sufficient, whether it's legal or otherwise. um yeah, it's just I don't know, some people have a hard time understanding that you can end up homeless still having a place that you could theoretically be. But sometimes your emotional or your mental state or what's going on in your life means it's easier to eat out of a dumpster. Um, but Anyhow, let's see. Question. I love how you refer to plants and herbs as she or her because it makes me feel like I am with friends in my garden. May I ask why? First of all, thank you for enjoying that. You wouldn't believe how often I get yelled at for calling a plant female. It's fucking crazy. It's almost like we're at war with females right now. But well, a lot of that is because a vast majority of plants are female. Plants have biological sexes. They are either male, female, or asexual, and when they're asexual, a vast majority of the time they are female and only produce male counterparts to reproduce, and then they just. The best way to explain it is I want you to think of a squash plant for anybody who's ever gardened. A squash will put out two blooms. One bloom will be a male flower, and one bloom will be a female flower. The male flower will be used by bees to pollinate the female flower. The male aspect, the male flower will die off, and the female grows fruit. When you eat a vegetable or a fruit or a squash, you are essentially eating the womb of a plant. Like that is her reproductive system. You are like taking in her womb that she meant to feed her seeds or whatever way she propagates. It's almost usually seeds, right? And so, vast majorities of plants are female. Now, you can get male and female trees, right? Like pine trees have male and female counterparts. Lots of nut trees have male and female counterparts. So, there is also he's out there, right? But, like, it's crazy how much people get fucking angry that I call a plant she. I mean, I have people rally at me in comment sections all the time, and I want to say about 80% of the time it's men. They're fucking angry. Like, the world is inherently female. We need males, obviously. They're very important. I'm not somebody who thinks that, you know, males should be stifled and women should be worshipped type situation. Like, we need them in balance, right? Um, but it's crazy because it's like almost all of the food you eat that's plant related is female to an extent in one way or another, or like everything is giving birth and you're here because you came out of a female vagina, right? Like, and it's so crazy how angry um, angry people get about it. It's like it's a fucking hot button. It's a hot button topic, you know. So that's why I say she all the time as well. But also, like, if you want to think about it in a different concept, like females are ultimately like exceptionally giving. I mean, we're conditioned to be that way, but like even if you're going past like the physiological or social aspects of it, like, well, I mean, I guess maybe it is physiological because we are constantly, we're giving birth, we're giving milk, we're giving care, you know, and so I feel like because plants give to us so much, they're inherently female because they're constantly giving, right? And we're constantly taking. And I'd like to say that also happens for females, right? Question. Not really, just wanted to thank you for helping so many. I'm grateful that you're here with me. Um, so, question. Do you notice yourself feeling more emotional during the full moon? Absolutely, because I bleed with the full moon. In the summertime, I do, anyhow, and so it pulls on me pretty hard. I fucking need to bleed so bad. I'm not pregnant. It's one of those things where my body's like, oh, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait just a little longer, and you're like, just do it. But I do, and then in the winter, my body will you know be late by a while, and I'll slowly shift and I'll bleed with the new moon in the winter. And that's probably more about, people are like, ooh, that's like woo woo magic, and I'm like, no, that's just like biological. Like the moon pulls us, and like depending on our levels of energy, we might bleed with the full moon and or the new moon. But if you pay attention to when your cycle is, if you have a regular cycle, you'll probably notice that you're either bleeding pretty close to the new moon or the full moon, right? And it can shift and change like that. Plus, if you're pregnant and you're like ready to pop and it's a fucking full moon, like you might realize that you gave birth on a full moon if you went and looked into it, or you're going to, you know, because it's water in your belly being pulled, right? Um, but yeah, I definitely, and then we've got big emotions going on in the house too. Right, but I don't know. I think I always have big emotions going on. The whole house is big emotions. We all have big emotions. Questions. Are there supportive herbs or tinctures to support someone coming off of opioids? Well, I could probably dig into this tomorrow a little more during the Friday Health Q&A, but I really like California poppy because she hits the same receptors in our brain as, because we have opioid receptors in our brain, for those who don't know, and it's why it's so easy for us to become addicted, because your body actually makes its own opioids to deal with pain, right? Um, but in like parts per million, little tiny amounts, right? But California poppy doesn't actually have opioids in her, but her latex properties hit the same receptor in the brain. And so it can kind of give you a little bit of relief because you're tricking your brain into thinking that you're giving it what it wants, even though you're not. Right. And so I think California poppy can be a really good tool for that. Um, let's see. Question. That's a health question. Question: would you call yourself pagan? Not really. I mean, you would if you're a Christian, because pagan is just a catch-all word for anybody who wasn't Christian. Right. People have adapted it, right? They've kind of glommed onto it, but so much falls under that umbrella that it's kind of like just, I don't know. I just don't really necessarily identify with it because it's not like something that like I am or like part of like my culture. It's just, it's kind of like the word witch. I also don't like that word. For me in my culture and lots of cultures, it was just a word of death. Right? Nobody called themselves witch. That wasn't their word for it. But if you got called that, you sure the fuck weren't gonna have a good day, you know? And as a person who has literally had like 3 people in my family line that were fucking killed for being witches because travelers work with cures a lot, so it was easy to say that we were like cursing people. Like they're, I don't know. I just don't like the word. I don't like the word pagan or witch towards myself. And my name is April. And that's just who I am as a person. Question. That's a health question. Question. Was there ever a time that you... Oh, lost it. Question. Was there ever a time that you wanted to give up on your business? And if so, how did you get out of that mindset? Yeah. Yeah. Um, for me, I didn't have a choice but to keep going because it's all I did for a living. It's all I do for a living. There wasn't like somebody, there's no safety net, there's no career to fall back on, there's no rich relative, there's no spouse that's also bringing in an income. Like this is what we do. And part of getting over that mindset is I didn't want to be homeless again, and I didn't want my kids to have to use buckets as a bathroom again, or like be just fucking desperate. Right. And so for me, it's like I just didn't have a choice. But then eventually, what I had to face, and this might be the more applicable part for somebody, is what about my business do I hate? What isn't working for me? And for me, ultimately, it was like how much it ate me alive, like how much there was no room for anything, including myself, but business. Right. And how little help I had, and how much pressure rests on my shoulders to like support the entire family, right? Um, so for me, it was about like finding ways to like fight and remedy that, like fight myself, and it was hard because like I talked about a few days ago. When you've been doing something for so long, change isn't just like instant because you have to put all these new systems in place. But um, finding a way finding a way to shift what you're doing physically. I would say that like a big part of my issue was some level of insanity. No, I mean like it was like I would think that I was making change, but I was just like there was this thing where I'm like, okay, well I need all of this machinery. I need all this machinery because my family's tired, my husband and my kids are tired of helping, and this machinery will take the work off of us. But what it usually did is it took the work off of them and put more work in my lap as I like took over running that machine and functioning that machine and doing that step, and now I do this step. And so I'd constantly make these changes, but the changes were often benefiting other people, or it would somehow like remove work for somebody, but like, and then I could make way more of something. And I was in that pattern for years, honestly. And it really took like walking away from a lot of aspects of it. Like right now, every day I get comments asking me, when am I going to bring this back? When am I going to do this? And it's really hard for me not to feel the pressure to like work myself to do all those things constantly. And stepping into like a minimalist as time goes approach. Like right now, I get help with my synergism capsules, my mouth mud, my pit goop. and my books, right? I mean, in regards of I'm not having to like physically manufacture these things. And so that's what I'm working on, and that's what I have in the shop. And now I've got help coming up for my creams and some more gels, and that's what I'm working on, and that's what I'll have in the shop, right? And so you might not be in that aspect, but I guess I would say if I could go back, I would like refine. I would really refine. Like I got to the point during shop updates for those of you who have ever like experienced them. I would have to have like 50 different things that I've made a million times available, and I didn't even have space emotionally or physically to create anything new. And then I got fucking burnt out. So, learning how to say no to yourself, learning how to look at how your patterns of change might actually be you avoiding change, right? And then once you get to that point where you can change or refine what you're doing, you can start changing your mindset, right? But also from a sheer business aspect, sit down and look at your money. Look at your money way harder than you're probably looking at your money. I know people don't like to talk about that aspect, like in the herbalism realms and things like that, but like it's a big part of it. Like make sure that you're actually remaining profitable, see what it would take for you to become profitable, find all the holes in your ship and patch them up where you're probably leaking money. And because you can find that if you can really tighten that up, you might not have to push as hard, or you might be doing better than you think you are, or you could adjust in this way or that way. Because if you're not paying attention to that, man, it gets away from you fast. It really, really does. And I say that as a person who's both like had to get away from me in big ways and like had to like you can't get back in and like put it back together. It's kind of good to have like both areas of experience because you can see what you've done and recognize patterns and stuff. Um, yeah, somebody said the world was so desperate for you, you got overwhelmed fast. Well, it's been a decade. I held on longer than the average person would, I think. I did shop updates for a decade. It was fucking crazy. And it's only been since last November that I stopped having shop updates, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore, and I can't keep up. And then we get to the point where not only could I not keep up, but then I'd get like berating emails telling me that I wasn't running my business well enough, and that I shouldn't allow. I don't know. It was fucking crazy, and the hard stuff gets to you quicker than the kind stuff does because that's the way your brain is wired. Let's see. Question: what is your mother's heritage or ancestry? My mom is a little bit of a mixed bag, but her and her family are heavily like indigenous to the area. Blackfoot, Cayuse, a little bit of Umatilla, but also I wonder about Warm Springs because she had a lot of direct relatives that were going back and forth between Warm Springs and Umatilla, which is where we're at now. And then she's Hungarian. That popped up in an ancestry DNA test because we were trying to figure out. Because it's really weird though, but her grandpa was yanked into a reform school for Native kids, right? And so it's hard. Records get like obliterated, and then sometimes when kids got out of those schools, they didn't go back to like being outwardly native. They would lie a lot. They would often tell people that they were like Spanish as adults or things like that. And so piecing that back together for her over the years has been a little challenging. Like we know, like we still have like direct family here, that we grow up with and is enrolled and everything like that. But it's kind of like, it's almost like fucking genocide and colonization makes record keeping of families hard. you know, um, but what I'd like to find is that Hungarian link. And I've been digging for it because it would, if we could find the direct ancestor, right? If we can find it and trace it all the way down, like I would be able to apply for Hungarian citizenship through my mom and all of us, which that would just be powerful to have a second passport. To like be able to just go anywhere in the EU without having to be back in 90 days, or opening up like schooling for the kids, or like fucking healthcare, or just being in a different country. Um, Question: what's your favorite food to make for your family? I don't know if there's like a favorite food to make for my family in general. Because everybody in my family has such different tastes and struggles with food in different ways. But lately, I have just been wanting to eat like a peasant. That's all I want to do. Like this morning, I had pearl barley for breakfast that just had like kind of half-ass caramelized onions and butter with a bunch of chard from the greenhouse, and then some chicken broth, and I just simmer that for like 30 minutes, and that's breakfast, right? Like, but I guess I'm ready to, like, I don't know. I eat pretty simple in general, but like I'm like, fuck it. Can we just have oatmeal for dinner? But no. I'm pretty good at making pizza. And not like the standard mom pizza that you're like, my mom made pizza, and it's like a fucking no, I'm pretty good at it. I've got the pizza stones and the peels, and I've been making them for a very long time because I don't really like takeout pizza. It's pretty fucking gross. And I think people put too much cheese on pizza, and I think you put it on too soon. Try putting your cheese on in the last 3 minutes of cooking. Do it. It won't be greasy anymore. It just melts right there on top, and you're done. You don't need to cook it for like the entire, however long you're cooking your pizza. Try it. I swear to God. It's hard to find Hungarian links because of the Magyar language. I am stuck at my great great grandmother, I think, church records. Yeah, yeah, and that's been hard for me too. Plus, when the records, like, the countries changed, and so like I have to be like, oh, okay, so here's one, but was that's a different country now, but were they living there when it was part of Hungary before it collapsed? One of these days, I just need to save up money and hire somebody, is what I need to do, because she had like something like 30% Magyar, like, DNA, and that's enough that she has like recent ancestries. Oh, and then I found our family is weird in the way that, like, we find like weird intergenetic pockets of things. I also found out that she had a bunch of German in them, and she was from the, oh, what is it called? Amana, some sort of specific colony that's in the Midwest of like these German people that like ran from religious persecution and like hid like well before Holocaust type of stuff, right? And it was like, holy shit, we had like found that like she was so much from there that like her uncle still like lived and died there, and I attempted to follow that line back because sometimes you can get like German heritage that way, but because it was a female, right? Because they stripped females of their citizenship if they would get married or that kind of stuff. But I tried to argue it because it was like, well, technically, some great great grandmother that was German gave birth to a bastard. She wasn't married yet. So technically that child wouldn't have lost its citizenship, but it's harder down the female line, and I can't find anything on the male line because she married a Scottish guy, right? But it's convoluted. I've been at it for a very long time because, first you have two parents and then grandparents and then quad, and then suddenly you've got like 800 great great grandparents or some shit like that. No, not Mennonites. They're not Dutch Mennonites. It was the Amana colony. They're like, it was some sort of German religion. I don't remember right off the top of my head. 3 months ago, if you had asked me, I could have told you all about it. But now I don't remember. Yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. I did ancestry for a really long time because when I was a kid, we had a huge family. We literally had like a traveler encampment where like my grandpa like built the houses and all the people were there, and there were so many people that you couldn't fit everybody at the table, and like everybody was traveling all over and we're doing all kinds of things, and then we'd come back together. But my parents had me a little later in life. And so suddenly, instead of dinners, there was funerals. Suddenly, instead of too many people at a table, there's not enough to fill up a table. And so, and my dad and my Uncle Aaron were the only people who had kids, but he had kids way sooner before my parents did, and then the mom took those kids far away. So they came back, but, we don't really know them, and they don't really, I don't know. So it's really weird. So on my dad's side, it's like we went from having this huge traveler community to like no one. And when you're like in and from a culture that is still very much so like nomadic and like very tribal in a sense, like the depths of loneliness you feel after that are fucking wild, right? And so I don't know why I turned to like looking at the dead. It's not like I mean, I now know a huge amount about my family way, way, way back, but it doesn't do me any good, like, but so I held on to that for a long time, and I have a massive tree. I, like, traced it all the way back to, like, the 1300s. It's fucking crazy. But, it's really weird. So now it's just, like, me, my sister, her young son, my 2 kids, and my parents. I mean, of course, I've got my husband and my mom and things like that. And my mom has 2 siblings left, and then a bunch of nephews and nieces. But I don't know. It's not quite the same. It's really weird. It's really weird, on my dad's side, anyhow, like how it just went from, like, everybody to nobody. And a lot of people assimilated. They settled down. They married outside of the culture and just kind of, like, drifted, right? But I see remnants of it. I see remnants of it sometimes. Like, I'll notice somebody traveling through, I know what they're doing and I know who they are, and I'll be like, because you usually stick pretty close to your family, because it's different in the U.S. It's different in the U.S. than it is over in the EU, because it's so big and there's so few of us here that it's just like, you kind of really just know your own family sections, right? So it's, and then a lot of my grandma side of the family from that side, from the traveler side, they're still down in, like, the Missouri area, but I don't really know how to get a hold of them. I know about where they probably encamp at, right? I know, like, the general location, but walking into that would be hard, right? Because just because I'm related doesn't mean that they'd trust me. Right, and so, but I get it. I get it. Like, if someone knocks on my door and I was like, hey, it would be like, like, even though we're distant related, but, what's my blood type? Well, if you're gonna come harvest me, I'm A negative. I am A negative. I'm, they always try to give me that shot, but I have refused it with both of my children, and what was interesting is, it was, I don't know, so, like, my body, we didn't reject each other. Like, so, like, the kids that I have had are fully acceptable and accepted by my body, right? And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know, that shot, I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me to try to force, like, a body to, like, I know the concept behind getting the shot if you're Rh negative, but I don't know. I don't like the idea of having to, like, force nature to do something that doesn't want to, I didn't think no one was gonna come harvest my blood. No, it'd be fucking crazy. But shit might get that way. Shit might get that way eventually if we're looking for somebody who has a type of blood that isn't, the word I can't say out loud. But yeah, what is my favorite smell? Well, this is just gonna be how I fucking end it and freak people out. My favorite smell is like blood. Like blood from, like, a wild kill. And I know people are like, holy fuck, she's got demons in her. But no, there's something about that smell if you've never gone hunting. It's very specific. And before anybody thinks that's fucking crazy, do you like the smell of a steak cooking? Right? Like, it's so funny that people are like, oh, fuck, what the fuck? But I'm like, yeah, but you like the smell of meat before you eat it, right? It's the same thing. But I really, it's just, it reminds me of my childhood. It just, oh man, it lights up every hair on my body. Like, I am Predator in that moment, right? It's not the iron. It's not the iron smell. It's wild. I know what iron and blood smells like, but it's because you could say that, well, we do, like, our own cattle and stuff like that, and it's not the same smell. I don't mind it, but it's like the wild blood. It's something about wild blood smells completely different than if you were doing, like, a cow or a goat or a chicken. It is just so different. Someone said gasoline smells good to them. Yeah, that is the same thing that my son likes, and it'll fucking make me die inside. I'm like, I cannot handle the smell of gas. And it's so funny because it was so bad when I was pregnant with my son that I wouldn't go with people if they were going to get gas first. Or I would have to get out and, like, be like, drop me off at the corner, go get gas, come back and get me, because the smell of the gas while I was pregnant with my son was so bad I would just, like, instantly puke. And now he's like, I love the smell of gas. I'm like, you're fucking weird. But yeah, I appreciate everybody helping me keep my brain distracted. And if my husband was listening to this, it might have also helped him, although he's probably to where he was going by now. And I am just really, really, really grateful for everybody allowing me to be human, to have the space to exist. And it's also really helped me to not have to be on all the time, even though I know I'm answering questions about myself. I've been trying to find a balance between, like, I know that my brain can give you all the information that you might be seeking, but I'm also a human. And it kind of becomes tiresome after a while, where like I'm just like constantly like dinged, and it's not anything that anybody's doing wrong. I'm here to answer questions. But finding that boundary within myself, right? Finding like even my worth outside of that has been really helpful. These tea times have been really helpful for that, you know. And I think it helps people see me as human with human limitations, and like being allowed to have hard days and good days and days that I need distractions and all that kind of stuff. In between, being able to pour out my brain is really, really, really helpful. But for those of you who are desperately wanting to ask me a health question, tomorrow is Friday, right? Yeah, tomorrow's Friday, and that is my dedicated health Q&A day. So tomorrow, I will turn off my frontal lobes and turn on my matrix thinking, and I will just pour out information to you. But today I'm just going to take it easy because, you know, big emotions, and be there for my husband when he gets home and all that kind of stuff. If you would like to support my capacity to be a real human with boundaries and issues and things in life, consider becoming a member. It's a way to throw me a couple of bucks a month. You do get early access to videos if I upload them early during the week. I do not obviously have one uploaded early this week because it's been a long week. But if you can't afford to, no worries. Those videos are always published on a Saturday. So it's just a way to throw me a couple bucks a month. You could also call something home from my apothecary. I make all kinds of things. You can use the one-time code TEATIME, TEATIME, and save 10% off of anything that you'd like to call home. It directly supports my capacity to teach freely, keep a roof over my head, and tea in my pot kind of deal. So you can also like, comment, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. Sharing is super important because it helps other people realize that they can just be a human too, that they can learn freely and all this kind of stuff, and it helps get my work out there, and, you know, just all the general stuff that I normally say. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see everybody during tomorrow's Friday Q&A. Bye!